one of the best journalists you're going to find in this state. We have her right here, Anjalee Khemlani, managing editor of ROI-NJ. By the way, for those who do not know what ROI-NJ is, tell them.
Return on Information. It's a statewide business publication.
Anjalee, let's get right into the fact that we're doing this program a week after the governor's budget address. It'll be seen after that. The issues still matter. The governor is not going to change on this one. He said, we need a millionaire's tax. $5 million last year. Going to increase taxes this year, $1 million. Why is that such a huge issue?
It's a huge issue for the business community because you're not just talking about people who are wealthy, you're talking about job creators in the state. And that's what the biggest pushback that you're going to see from them. And they're pretty adamant about that. So you're talking about startup companies, you're talking about people who are part of the ecosystem, right, of the state. And so if you have more people who are being taxed and more of that money is going towards the state, they're just not going to be as philanthropic. They're not going to be as, ready to put that money into other parts of the state.
We just had the Speaker of the House, Craig Coughlin, on, and he said, and also the Senate President said, no, we're not for this. There are certain aspects of the governor's budget we like. This one we do not. Do you buy into the argument, and by the way, John Bramnick, the Assembly Minority Leader, came on State of Affairs and said, we're going to lose more and more people who earn $1 million up to Florida, where there is no income tax. Do you buy it?
I think everyone has seen this happen. Whether or not it happens in droves or it's just anecdotal is what we have to wait and see.
Is it relevant? Even if it's anecdotal, is it relevant?
Of course it's relevant. It's relevant because you're going to be losing the higher income people, and then the burden shifts to the middle class and lower class of the state.
But the governor is arguing that this is tax fairness, and what you described just then didn't sound fair. If it's,
well,
but that's not the governor. But hold on, that's not the governor's intent. To push the tax burden on the middle class and those who earn less, right?
His assumption, I'm assuming, and this is just based on what I've heard, is that we're not going to see this outmigration. The outmigration part is a myth. And even if we do, there's just the way that he was able to sort of like speak to the corporate community. And I understand that he had like one-on-one meetings with some of them to just sort of explain and balance out that issue from last year's budget. So I don't know if that happens this year as well. I don't know if it's like, they've taken an internal poll of all the millionaires and asked them whether or not they're okay with this, if they're not going to leave. Who knows?
By the way, as I said before, the ROI website will be up again because Anjalee has written many articles on this budget, and it's way more than just the millionaire tax. Can we do innovation for a second?
Sure.
We're doing a series on the future of innovation. 2 initiatives. There's a Hoboken Energy Initiative. What is that, and why is it relevant to folks outside of Hoboken?
It's relevant because it's an interesting new plan. So the municipal buildings are going to be running off of all clean energy only. They stopped buying energy from PSE&G, which, as we know, is the largest energy provider in the state, and they're going to be buying it from a third party and buying outside of the state energy. And so that's a really big move for a city, right, to just be dependent on non-state sources. And if it's replicated, then it could actually hurt the energy companies in the state.
But we have to observe how that plays out.
Correct.
Because we're not sure. It's an experiment.
It's an experiment. It's just one city. It's a small city. It's an important city because it's right along the Gold Coast, right? So that's why it's one to watch, because it really is an innovative idea.
Speaking of innovation, ROI-NJ does an awful lot when it comes to innovation. A lot of articles, a lot of features. Do you believe, as Governor Murphy has argued, that this is an innovation state with huge economic development opportunities around innovation?
Potential, yes. You have a lot of the potential, yes. I mean, you have all the right pieces in place. It's just that going back to the way that the state sort of operates with the home rule, with the politics, I think that you have this sort of clear divide between the people who are globally connected and the people who are hyper-local, and there's no in between.
Do you see the biggest difference between the Christie administration and the Murphy administration as it relates to dealing with the business community is?
That's an interesting one. I unfortunately didn't have as much experience with the Christie administration, so from what I can tell, the business friendliness idea is still there. It's just in a different way.
So stay on that in the time we have left. The economic development incentives, the tax incentives with the Economic Development Authority. We're not going to get into the details of it. Let that play out in the legislature and other places. Overall, do you believe that they've been good for certain urban communities like Camden, Trenton, Jersey City, Newark, et cetera?
They have been, because you need the foundation of these companies to help restart an economy in those places. You can't do it on the backs of small business.
So those who say, whether it's in New York with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and others, said, you can't, Amazon, no. Either they're going to, okay, I'm sorry, did I open up Pandora's box?
A little bit, yeah, that goes in so many different...
By the way, scrap that, don't even edit it out, it's my mistake. But that's not what we're talking about here.
We're just talking about bigger companies, names that people recognize. It's the same concept as anchor institutions in shopping malls. Why was it necessary to have a Walmart or a Target or whatever at a shopping mall to get that in there?
To attract others.
It's the same concept.
Anjalee Khemlani, managing editor of ROI-NJ. Check her work out and the work of her colleagues, and we thank you for joining us on State of Affairs. Well done. I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you for joining us on this particular edition of State of Affairs. I'm confident we'll see you next week.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, the Turrell Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, Rowan University, Delta Dental of New Jersey, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey.